حقي اتعلم، حملة تأمين مستلزمات المدرسة. نستقبل التبرعات العينية بمكاتب الأمانة السورية للتنمية بالمحافظات. كمان فيك تساهم معنا نقداً برسالة نصية فاضية على الرقم 1966 أو عن طريق حساب البنك. ولادنا أمل بلادنا.
The UN Secretary-General announces Syria's official joining the international treaty forbidding chemical weapons next month. The world welcomes Russian-American agreement on the chemical weapons in Syria that will push forward the political solution of the crisis. And schools open their gates for the start of the new school year. Good afternoon, welcome to News Bulletin. I'm Dania Nizam. The UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon announced that Syria had officially joined the international treaty forbidding chemical weapons as of next month. The spokesman of the UN Secretary-General said that he had received the official document of Syria's joining the treaty, which will be implemented 30 days after submitting the document, i.e. on October 14th. Mr. Ki-moon welcomed the agreement between Lavrov and Kerry about chemical weapons in Syria. China also renewed its welcome of the Russian-American agreement about chemical weapons in Syria. The Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who received his French counterpart Laurent Fabius in Beijing, said that the agreement would open the gate to solve the crisis in Syria peacefully. Paris, London, Berlin and the UN welcomed the Russian-American agreement about chemical weapons in Syria. The British Foreign Minister William Hague considered the urgent task of applying this agreement starting as of now. The German Foreign Minister expressed Germany's welcome of this agreement. The UN Secretary-General pledged to support its implementation. On the other hand, the agreement created panic in the Turkish government and the terrorist militias and the Doha coalition, which sponsors them. The Secretary-General of NATO, Andrews Rasmussen, also welcomed this agreement at Geneva about chemical weapons in Syria. Rasmussen said the agreement was an important step on the way to destroy the stored chemical weapons in Syria quickly. He expressed hope that the agreement would push forward the political solution in order to end the terrible bloodshed in Syria. Voices opposed to the American aggression on Syria are increasing and becoming louder day after day inside America. A new opinion poll showed that 3/4 of the Americans support the efforts to solve the crisis in Syria through an international agreement on chemical weapons. TV meetings of the American president to convince his people have reflected the feelings against aggression on Syria. This had thrown a dark shadow on Obama's attempt to obtain congressional approval of military intervention in Syria. Even the American soldiers are afraid of war because of their painful experiences in Afghanistan and Iraq. America's false claims about Iraq's possession of nuclear weapons have been fully exposed. Many American soldiers and officers raised placards asserting that they did not join the army to fight side by side with Al-Qaeda. They also photographed themselves in full military uniform, carrying placards rejecting war and refusing to join such a war on Syria. A leaked classified CIA's document has disclosed that Al-Qaeda-linked armed groups fighting in Syria possessed and manufactured sarin gas to launch chemical attacks against the Syrian civilians. Another evidence on the involvement of these groups in the chemical attack perpetrated on the 21st of August in Ghouta area in Damascus countryside to halt the Syrian government responsible for and to call for an American military intervention. The document further asserted that 12 of Jabhat Nusra were detained with bottles of sarin gas in their possession south of Turkey along the Syrian-Turkish border earlier this year, adding that these poisonous bottles were smuggled from Iraq to be smuggled to Syria later. The document further asserted that the American army carried out many investigations and that news coming from Iraqi tribes showed more than 50 traces that proved that Al-Qaeda in Iraq developed sarin gas to be smuggled to Syria, and that the preliminary results of the investigation carried out by the UN on the terrorist chemical attack on Khan al-Assal district in Aleppo pointed strongly to the fact that the armed groups were behind it. For his part, expert in international terrorism Joseph Bodansky said that the latest results on the chemical attack on Ghouta proved that the chemical attack perpetrated by the armed groups against its own posts aimed to bring about an American intervention in Syria, and that the chemical substance used was primitively prepared in houses and not by armies. In the Homs countryside, our valiant armed forces and border guards repulsed a terrorist attempt to infiltrate from Lebanon into the Tel Kela countryside across the position of Uzir, scoring direct hits among the terrorists. During the inspection of the southern farms in Palmyra, our armed forces found a number of rockets, explosive devices and a pickup vehicle containing weapons and ammunition buried in the dust by the terrorists. Our armed forces also destroyed a terrorist hideout in El Taiba, killing and wounding the terrorists and destroying 6 of their vehicles and a reservoir. A military source said that a unit of our armed forces destroyed the headquarters of the so-called the Legitimate Committee of the Victory Front. The unit also destroyed large amounts of weapons in a vehicle in Deir ez-Zor. A field hospital for the terrorists was also destroyed, and the terrorists hiding there were killed and wounded. The Deputy Interior Minister of Iraq, Adnan al-Assadi, asserted that the Saudi regime was deploying forces to wage terrorist attacks on Iraq. In the conference of Iraqi tribes in the southwest, asserted that the Iraqi tribes refused the calls of the Saudi regime to a number of tribal sheikhs and leaders to come to a meeting with the King of Saudi Arabia in Riyadh. Bandar bin Sultan was trying to spread terror and murder in Iraq by recruiting mercenaries to carry out terrorist attacks against the Iraqi people. Al-Assadi said that these savage acts of Bandar were aimed at making the Iraqis kill each other. However, Bandar received a blow when the Iraqi tribes rejected his suspicious calls. The governor of Al-Muthanna, Ibrahim al-Mayali, asserted the tribal leaders wrote an Iraqi treaty pledging loyalty to their country and preventing the terrorists from buying mercenaries and displacing Iraqi families. The police leader of the governorate asserted that the security forces would set up a strong block against mercenaries in the Iraqi desert adjacent to the Saudi borders. They would never allow any terrorist infiltration into Iraq. A number of terrorists confessed to taking part in committing brutal crimes against citizens and army personnel, including abduction and murder, vandalizing public establishments and receiving funds and weapons from countries in the region. More follows in the following report.
My friend Muhammad Khalid Al-Hussein from Al-Hamra village in Hama city, who was performing the military service with me, defected from the army and encouraged me to do so and joined the terrorist group of Al-Bara affiliated to Al-Nusra Front. I left the base where I was serving in Suwaida and joined up with the terrorists, who gave me a monthly salary of 12,000 Syrian pounds. They gave me an automatic rifle, 3 full magazines and 200 bullets. Members of the terrorist group and I attacked army checkpoints in Dar'a countryside, including 2 in Kharbet Ghazale, where we slaughtered all 35 soldiers in it and stole their weapons, which we turned over to Jabhat al-Nusra. I also took part in 8 acts of abduction, including 2 in which the abductees were delivered to a man called Muhammad al-Zabi in the town of Al-Msayfre, where al-Zabi issued a fatwa to kill the 2 after they refused to join the terrorists. So I slit their throats while they were tied up. 2 of my associates slaughtered the throats of the other 6 abductees, and they were rewarded with 1,500 Syrian pounds for everyone whose throat was slit, and 2,000 for each attack on an army checkpoint. I am a member of a group affiliated with Jabhat al-Nusra. I was recruited with a promise of being paid 12,500 Syrian pounds a month and 2,000 for each attack on a checkpoint. After being given an automatic rifle, I took part in several attacks on checkpoints in Damascus countryside and opened fire against 15 Syrian army personnel. I also took part in dozens of robberies and thefts of stores and warehouses. We also received funds and weapons from Qatar, and we were joined by gunmen from Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Palestine and other countries. The group's leader, Bashar Awad, asked me to join the army to get a rifle and then run away with it. So I enlisted but ran away without stealing a rifle and joined the terrorist group. The first operation I took part in was the detonation of a car bomb in Khan al-Sheikh area, when I helped in rigging the car with around 500 kilograms of explosives. And later my group and I detonated a second car bomb in the same area and took part in several attacks on checkpoints there, killing around 20 soldiers. The leader of the group asked me to bring one of my 3 wives to serve as a wife for the other terrorists, so I brought my wife Fatima Ahmed Farouk to the group. We received explosives, weapons and funds from Jordan. I was recruited by the leader of a terrorist group who knew my uncle, who was harboring him and recruiting for his group. My uncle talked me into joining with the promise of receiving 12,000 Syrian pounds per month. I participated in the operations carried out in the eastern Ghouta alongside with other terrorists from Libya, Afghanistan, Pakistan and Jordan. We were receiving money from Turkey via the terrorist group's leader, who were distributing it. I am affiliated to Altair Battalion alongside 500 other gunmen. I participated in the attack on the Vehicle Management Department in Harasta. We killed 11 military personnel and kidnapped 9 others from the Technical Institute. I also took part in preparing 2 booby-trapped cars which were later detonated in Jaramana and Al-Qazzaz, claiming dozens of lives and wounding others.
With the start of the new school term this year, millions of pupils and students headed to their schools across Syria. The Ministry of Education has completed all preparations for the start of the new school year, and rehabilitation work was finalised in the schools that were damaged by the terrorists in the worst hit areas. Minister of Education Dr. Hazwan Lewis said that about 500 schools have been rehabilitated after being attacked by the armed terrorist groups this year. The minister asserted that the ministry was ready to receive all students in schools across the country. And the governorates. Ahead of the national vaccination campaign for the current year, which will be launched during the next months of October and November, Minister of Health Dr. Saad Naif emphasised that the ministry continued its coordination with the international organisations in order to provide the vaccines to Syrian children who were forced by the terrorist armed groups to flee to the neighbouring countries, indicating that the annual cost of vaccines amount to 5 billion Syrian pounds, and these vaccines are available in all health centres despite the current circumstances in Syria. Dr. Naif said that 11 types of vaccines are provided that would help prevent various dangerous diseases that hit children, as well as medicine for the patients with chronic and common diseases such as hepatitis, tuberculosis and others, and they are all to be distributed for free in all health centres. And this ends our news for today. Thank you for watching. As for more details about Syria and the region, you can view our bulletin on syriaonline.sy. Over to our market and economic news after this break. Thank you for watching again. God bless you and long live Syria.
Good afternoon. The Minister of Housing and Urban Development highlighted the need to reach a formula that would help the Ministry and the Real Estate Development and Investment Commission to create real estate development areas. The move should go in line with the development plan that is proposed by the Regional Planning Commission. The Minister stressed the need for the Real Estate Development Commission to lead the initiative and to identify the appropriate areas. The team specialized in imports held a meeting under the chairmanship of the Minister of Economy and Foreign Trade, the Minister of Industry, the Governor of the Central Bank of Syria, and representatives from the Union of the Chambers of Trade and Industry. The team discussed the mechanism of controlling and financing imports and providing the local markets with them. The Ministry of Economy is considered the only body to grant imports licenses and to specify priorities in regards to commodities, while the Central Bank would finance them. The director of Grains Establishment asserted that 60,000 tons of wheat will be imported during the few coming days, noting that 180,000 tons of wheat would be received in a month. He pointed to the stored amounts of wheat reserves in Syria that are sufficient for a year to come. He highlighted that 1.2 million tons have been received so far and that the remaining quantities would be received gradually. The director of the General Establishment of Storage and Marketing asserted that the establishment has an abundance of foodstuffs and agricultural materials. The establishment provides the outlets with the basic needs from its reserves, pointing out that the Governorate of Damascus is currently working to prepare 3 locations in the city to become miniature malls. The first mall will be in the Dalla Park in Masda area, the second in Al Tijara area, and the third near Ibn al-Nafis Hospital in Damascus. And now over to the exchange rates according to the bulletin of the Central Bank of Syria. With this, we conclude our news. Thank you for watching and goodbye.